Here is what the mainstream media will not tell you. They are covering two separate stories right now. One story is about John Brennan, former CIA director, invoking the 25th Amendment against a sitting president during an act of war. The other story is about Iran's Revolutionary Guard turning its weapons against its own government while the streets of Tehran burn. The media is treating these as two different fires. They are the same fire. And the accelerant, the one economic weapon that connects Washington's constitutional crisis to Tehran's internal collapse, has not been named once on any major network. Not CNN, not Fox, not MSNBC. In the next 10 minutes, we are going to name it. We are going to show you exactly how one decision made in the Strait of Hormuz 50 days ago created a chain reaction that now sits at the door of the United States Constitution itself. Stay with us, because by the end of this, you will understand what is actually happening, not the version designed to keep you confused. Let us start with the architecture of the trap, because this was not improvised, this was engineered. On February 28th of this year, the United States and Israel launched nearly 900 strikes in the first 12 hours against Iranian nuclear and military infrastructure. The stated objective was to prevent Iranian nuclear capability, but the actual strategic objective, the one being discussed in classified settings, was something more precise. Washington did not want to destroy Iran. Washington wanted to break the IRGC's mythology while leaving Iran's elected government just functional enough to eventually negotiate. Here's how the game theory works. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the IRGC, controls between 30 and 40% of Iran's entire economy. Oil contracts, telecommunications, banking, ports. This is not a military organization in any traditional sense. This is a parallel empire with soldiers attached. And that empire's survival depends on one thing above all else, the narrative of resistance. Without an eternal enemy, without the permanent threat of American aggression, the IRGC has no justification for its trillion-dollar grip on Iranian society. So, when President Pezeshkian began quietly signaling to Washington that Iran was willing to negotiate, the IRGC did not respond with debate. They responded with an undeclared war against their own president. But here is the part they did not tell you. The IRGC launched a naval operation in the Gulf designed as a demonstration of force. To prove their deterrence myth was still alive. They expected the world to flinch the way it flinched in 2012, the way it flinched in 2018. The operation lasted less than 20 minutes. 20 minutes. In 4 decades of carefully constructed deterrence mythology, billions of dollars of asymmetric naval investment was demolished in contact with modern American naval force. You cannot unsee that. You cannot propaganda your way out of that. Inside Tehran's power quarters, behind closed doors, one question began circulating that the regime feared more than any missile strike. If the IRGC cannot control its own territorial waters, what can it actually control? But here is what came next. And this is the part that connects directly to Washington tonight. Washington did not respond to Iran's naval failure by celebrating. They responded by engineering something far more devastating than a military counterstrike. The United States enforced a selective quarantine around Iranian oil exports. American naval forces stopped Iranian tankers, turned them back. But here's the critical distinction. The Strait of Hormuz itself remained open. Ships from every other nation passed freely. The world economy kept functioning. Only Iran was isolated. Only Iranian oil was blocked. Iran was experiencing the economic consequences of its own threatened embargo, without even having followed through on the threat. Now here's the economic mathematics that nobody in mainstream media is calculating for you. Iran's oil storage facilities are approaching maximum capacity within weeks. When those storage tanks are full, Iran must shut down its active oil wells. And a shut oil well is not a temporary pause. Geological pressure drops. Reservoir damage accumulates. Some wells take years to recover. Some never fully recover. The blockade is not just cutting off Iran's current revenue. It is reaching backward through time and permanently destroying Iran's future capacity to generate wealth. Simultaneously, and this is the part that turns abstract economics into street-level fury, Iran does not have sufficient domestic refining capacity for its own crude. Iran exports raw oil. Iran imports refined gasoline and diesel. With no foreign currency from blocked oil sales, Iran cannot buy refined fuel. The result is gasoline lines stretching for hours across Tehran, Isfahan, Mashhad, and Shiraz. Hospitals running critically low on generator fuel. Factories going dark. A nation sitting on top of one of the world's largest oil reserves, experiencing fuel shortages. That absurdity is translating directly into rage on the streets. And this is where the story inside Iran connects directly to the story inside Washington in a way that no major outlet has yet drawn a straight line through. This afternoon, a statement appeared under a name that has not been attached to a call for the constitutional removal of a sitting president at any previous point in American public life. John Brennan, former director of Central Intelligence, 25 years inside the operational core of the CIA, not a pundit, not a professor, a man who spent his career inside the rooms where presidents authorized the use of military force. And today, in a formal written essay co-signed by former directors of national intelligence, a former chairman of the Joint Chiefs, and senior career officials from the CIA, NSA, and State Department, he did something that former intelligence chiefs are institutionally conditioned never to do. He named Section 4 of the 25th Amendment as the constitutional mechanism that the Vice President and the Cabinet should now be considering. Understand what this is and what it is not. Section 4 of the 25th Amendment allows the Vice President and a majority of the Cabinet to declare in writing that the President is unable to discharge the powers of his office. The Vice President immediately assumes power as acting President. It has existed since 1967. It has never been successfully invoked. There is no Supreme Court precedent. There is no operational playbook. Brennan is not predicting invocation. He is not claiming Vice President Vance is preparing any such move. He is doing something arguably more consequential. He is establishing a record, in real time, with the weight of his specific institutional authority. The co-signers are deliberately cross-partisan, former Republican foreign policy officials, former Democratic national security figures. The unifying characteristic is not party affiliation. It is that every single signer has, at some point in their career, briefed a president on whether a proposed military operation was likely to achieve its stated objectives without producing catastrophic unintended consequences. What they are saying collectively is this: the Iran war, as currently being conducted, would not have passed that review in any previous administration they served. And the specific argument is not that the president is medically unwell. The argument is that the decision-making visible in the public record, the April 7th threats to destroy a whole civilization, the naval blockade declared on April 12th, the accelerating sequence of ultimatums and reversals, represents the degradation of the National Security Council process itself. The word Brennan uses in that essay, according to early reporting, appears 3 times. Unstructured. In national security circles, that is a term of art. It does not mean bad. It does not mean wrong. It means decisions are being made outside the process designed to surface the range of consequences a president is supposed to weigh before authorizing action that could kill thousands. When a former CIA director uses that word in writing about a sitting president during an active war, he is not editorializing. He is describing what he sees. And he is making sure the historical record reflects that someone with standing said so at the moment it was happening. But here is the part that nobody, and we mean nobody, is talking about yet. Here is the original geopolitical consequence that neither the Brennan essay nor the Iran coverage has reached. The Strait of Hormuz carries approximately 20% of the world's daily oil supply. Since the naval blockade declaration on April 12th, the strait has been mined, contested, and commercially disrupted. Oil prices have broken above $100 a barrel. Japanese and Korean utilities, among the world's largest energy buyers, are aggressively signing long-term contracts for Canadian crude and liquefied natural gas from alternative terminals. That is a permanent realignment of energy trade flows. But here is the consequence that goes deeper than any single commodity price. The global oil trade is denominated in US dollars. This is the foundation of American financial power since the 1970s, the Petrodollar system. Every nation that buys oil must first acquire dollars. That demand for dollars funds American debt. It keeps U.S. Treasury yields manageable. It is the quiet engine of American financial supremacy that has operated in the background of every geopolitical calculation for 50 years. When energy markets destabilize, when buyers start locking in non-Gulf supply and non-dollar denominated contracts with producers like Canada, Australia, and Norway, the marginal demand for U.S. dollars decreases, quietly, gradually, but measurably. China has been watching this for 5 years. Beijing's push for yuan-denominated oil contracts, the Petro-yuan, has gained precisely 0 traction in stable energy market conditions. Buyers have no incentive to abandon the dollar system when it is working smoothly. But in a prolonged Gulf disruption, in a scenario where the Strait of Hormuz remains commercially uncertain for months, energy buyers begin building dollar alternative payment infrastructure simply as a hedge, not because they want to abandon the dollar, because procurement officers do not wait for geopolitical questions to resolve, they hedge. And here is where the game theory closes the loop entirely. Action A, Washington engineers an oil blockade that destroys the IRGC's economic empire and forces Iran's internal collapse. Reaction B, prolonged Gulf disruption accelerates alternative energy trade infrastructure, including non-dollar payment systems, that China has been building for years. Action C, the Brennan 25th Amendment moment signals to global markets that American political decision-making on the war is becoming volatile, adding a constitutional risk premium on top of the military risk premium already priced into oil. Reaction D, long-term energy buyers accelerate their diversification away from Gulf supply and away from dollar-denominated contracts. not as a geopolitical statement, but as basic risk management. The trap that Washington set for Iran may be working exactly as designed. Iran's internal architecture is fracturing in real time. The IRGC is at war with its own president. The conventional army is quietly positioning against the Revolutionary Guards. The proxy network across Lebanon, Yemen, Iraq, and Syria is dissolving as Iranian money dries up. But every day the Gulf remains disrupted. The secondary consequence accumulates silently in currency markets, in long-term energy contracts, in the quiet infrastructure of a world that is hedging against American financial reliability at the same moment it is watching an American constitutional question unfold in public. Washington may win the Iran war, and in winning it, if the disruption extends long enough, inadvertently accelerate the one structural challenge to American power that no military operation can reverse. That is the third angle. That is what nobody is saying out loud yet. This brings us to the three scenarios, and the honest answer about which one is most likely. Scenario 1 is the noise scenario. The Brennan essay generates 2 to 3 weeks of coverage and recedes. Vance and the cabinet publicly reject any Section 4 consideration. The Republican Congressional Caucus rallies. Former officials face clearance reviews and personal attacks. The Iran war continues. The blockade holds. Oil stays above $100. Alliances strain, but do not rupture. And the Brennan moment becomes a footnote, referenced in memoirs a decade from now, operationally irrelevant today. Political gravity favors this scenario. It is what happens most of the time when former officials make extraordinary public statements. Scenario 2 is the constraint scenario. The Brennan essay becomes a seed crystal for broader institutional fracture. Additional former officials, including quiet resignees from the current administration, release their own statements. Military retirees add their names. A faction of Republican senators who have been privately critical begin to say publicly what they have only said behind closed doors. Congressional oversight committees demand classified briefings on the Iran decision-making process. Section 4 is never invoked, but the administration is forced to devote significant political capital to defending its conduct. The war slows, not because the president chooses to slow it, but because institutional resistance makes further escalation politically costlier. Scenario 3 is the crisis scenario. An external event, a direct confrontation with Iranian forces, a major American or Allied casualty event, a further Gulf escalation, compresses Scenario 2's timeline from months into weeks. The calculations inside the cabinet shift under the weight of specific operational failure. The constitutional question Brennan raises today becomes operationally relevant within a time horizon measured in months rather than theoretical years. This is the scenario that keeps senior officials in Washington awake at night, not because they expect it, because they cannot rule it out. Here is where we are tonight. An Iranian regime is fracturing from inside, its military at war with its own president, its streets in open revolt, its oil empire hemorrhaging, its proxy network dissolving, and its 20-minute naval humiliation echoing through every corridor of power in Tehran. A former director of Central Intelligence has placed his name on a document that says, in institutional language stripped of any political coloring, that the constitutional mechanism for extraordinary presidential removal is now a subject that responsible people must consider. And underneath both of these stories, unspoken, unpriced, accumulating quietly in currency markets and long-term energy contracts, the petrodollar system is absorbing a stress test it was never designed to withstand. The historical record will reflect that someone said it first, on the record, in real time. The question that remains, the question that will be answered in the next 30 days, is whether the institutions of the American Republic respond before the external pressure forces their hand. John Brennan spent his career inside the rooms where presidents decided to use force. He is not given to rhetorical excess. When a man with that profile at this moment puts his name on this document, he is not making a prediction. He is filing a record. And the world, in London, Paris, Berlin, Ottawa, Beijing, and Riyadh, is reading that record and drawing its own conclusions about what it means for the reliability of the American decision-making apparatus going forward. That is the condition. That is what changed today. Hit the notification bell right now, because in the next 72 hours, one of three things is going to happen in Washington that will tell us exactly which scenario we are in. We are going to cover it the moment it breaks, with the same level of institutional analysis you just watched. And in our next video, the Saudi calculation. Riyadh has been silent through all of this, dangerously silent. We are going to show you exactly what the kingdom is preparing, and why their next move may be the single most consequential geopolitical decision of the next decade. That video drops in 48 hours. If you're not subscribed, you will miss it. This is War Room Economics. We do not shout. We show you the mechanics, turn on notifications. The next chapter is already moving.